She was a fertility nurse. She knew every protocol, every statistic, every clinical term. She had colleagues at her fingertips and doctors she could call. And she still felt utterly, completely alone. Today's guest, Laura Weppler, has spent over 12 years inside the fertility system, watching patients come and go, holding their hands through injections and waiting rooms and devastating news. She thought that knowledge would protect her when it was her turn. It didn't. Because when she lost her own pregnancy at 10 weeks, after months of IUIs, after surgeries that stretched into more surgeries, after a torn cervix, no one could explain. After embryo transfers that failed one by one, all the clinical knowledge couldn't touch the spiral she found herself in at home, Googling at midnight, looking for someone, anyone who had a story like hers. What Laura discovered is something I believe so deeply, that being inside the medical system doesn't protect you from the gaps in it. And those gaps, they're not just inconvenient. They're leaving women broken, isolated, and without the support they desperately need. This conversation is about what it actually looks like to navigate fertility treatment and loss from both sides, and what it might look like if someone finally built the bridge between them. Let's dive in. Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Sharna Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the podcast, the intersection of pregnancy loss, fertility, trauma, and purpose, having the conversations that should have been happening all along. Today, I have with me Laura Weppler. Laura is a fertility professional and the founder of Navigating Fertility with Laura, LLC, a virtual support service dedicated to helping individuals and couples move through fertility treatment with greater clarity and confidence. With more than 12 years of experience in fertility nursing and her own firsthand experience with IVF, Laura bridges the gap between the medical and emotional sides of care. She guides clients through the details of treatment, helps them advocate for themselves in clinical settings, and provides the emotional support often missing from the process. Thank you for joining us, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. I look forward to diving into what we are going to talk about today as you are in the medical system and going through fertility issues, challenges yourself, and feeling it from both sides, so feeling the isolation from the inside. So, do you want to share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I would love to. So, my story starts 12 years ago, actually, even further back than that. I entered the medical field in nursing thinking, I want to be a labor and delivery nurse. Like, how fun. I want to deliver babies. It'll be really cool. And I hated it. I was like, this is not for me. I didn't allow me. So I'm really big on building relationships with patients and learning their story and just building connection. And in labor and delivery, that's really not possible other than like the immediate moment that things are happening, but they're in, they're out, they have their baby, they go home. And so after a short time in labor and delivery, I knew I wanted to stay in women's health, but really had no idea what I wanted to do. So I just started putting applications out to different various listings, and one was for a fertility clinic. And I was like, okay, that sounds really interesting. It's still in the realm of prenatal care, perinatal care. I'll throw in an application and see what happens. And I didn't know anything about IVF. I didn't know anything. I had never even heard the term IUI. I didn't know what Clomid was or all the things that I know now. I had heard IVF, but didn't really know much about it. They don't teach you any of that in nursing school. And so at the time that I was getting ready to transition over to the fertility clinic, my husband and I were trying to conceive at that time. And I really thought, I was like, oh, you have sex, you pee on a stick, and a few days later you're pregnant. Yay. That's how it happens. There's nothing more complicated because
No.
that's what they tell you growing up in school. It's safe sex. Don't have sex because you'll get pregnant. So you think it's going to be really easy. And I enter this space of fertility. Ultimately, I always like to express like I had that moment of, oh my gosh, I love this. I've like found my purpose in life. I found my passion. I just found it so incredibly fascinating. And some of that I think was fueled by my own journey and learning all the nuances of the menstrual cycle and learning, oh, it takes a couple weeks after you have sex and it's just not that quick. And so as I was going through my training and learning the ropes, I started to put things together about my own body, things that I had expressed to my OB that my OB was like totally normal. I'm like, oh, it's normal to have 45, 50-day cycle. She's like, yeah, it's normal. And I'm like, that's not normal. And after working in the clinic for a while, we did some testing. It really was never fully explained, maybe some PCOS. I had some of the criteria for PCS, but not fully. And I could continue this story forever, but to cut it down a little bit, I will say ultimately I ended up trying IUIs. The first couple were unsuccessful. And then on the third, I was successful and was so excited. At this point, I think if you've never experienced a pregnancy loss, ignorance is bliss. You're totally ignorant to the feelings of what it's like to go through a loss and the impact that's going to have on you physically, emotionally, all the things. And made it through 8, 9 weeks of pregnancy, got discharged from the clinic, felt okay, this was great. It was easy. 3 IUIs, like I didn't have to do IVF. And we went in for our 10-week ultrasound with my OB, and there was no heartbeat. And I remember I was like, this is a mistake, right? I was just at my clinic, like everything was fine. This is a mistake. This is not happening. And it turned out to be a pretty traumatic miscarriage. I ultimately ended up having 3 surgeries to clear all of the tissue. I had two DNC, I had a DNC. Like 5 weeks after that, we did an ultrasound and a beta HCG level, and my levels were still like 10,000. And my fertility provider was like, I think this is a molar pregnancy. And I was freaking out. So I had another DNC, at which point the OB tore my cervix during the DNC. And so then, right, then this added psychological thought of, oh my gosh, I'm an avid incompetent cervix, and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get pregnant again. And oh my God, horrible. And even after the second DNC, the tissue still was not cleared. Ultimately had to go back in for a hysteroscopy at like month 3 or 4. I don't even remember at this point. And that was finally the point at which everything was resolved. And you can imagine like how traumatic that is to think, okay, this is it. Like I got my pregnancy, I got my miracle baby, and then like to go through months and months, like not just a pregnancy loss, but like a traumatic pregnancy loss of months of surgeries. So from that point, we decided, okay, let's give IVF a shot. Went through IVF, did very well. I was 28 when I went through it, so got a good amount of embryos and took multiple transfers to get pregnant. So first transfer, unsuccessful. We didn't PGT test, so it was like, okay, fine. One didn't work. Okay, fine. Went back in, did a second one. In the meantime, every time I would go in for ultrasounds, there was like fluid in my lining, which was probably caused by this torn cervix that I had. And I remember after the second failed transfer, which feels like losses every time you lose an embryo, I completely was on a spiral. I would go home. I worked in the clinic, and so I literally all day, my job was fertility, and then I would go home and I would be thinking about my own fertility journey, and this is never going to happen. And I'd be watching patients that I'd be working with getting discharged from the clinic, and I could certainly be that role for my patients in the clinic that I needed to be. I could be encouraging for them. I could think clearly for them, like rationally, but I would go home and I would immediately spiral. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna need a gestational carrier. Clearly, my body can't carry a pregnancy, and this is never gonna happen for me. And I would be doing the things that I tell people not to do. I would be on Google. I would be on TikTok, didn't exist back then. I don't even know if Instagram existed back then, quite honestly. But I would be on like the Facebook forums and trying to find some answer to what was happening with me. And if somebody else out there was successful and had a similar situation, oh, then I'd find relief. But we never find that, right? That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Even no matter how much we go down the rabbit hole. Working in the field and going through this at the same time, I had all the knowledge. I mean, at this point in our journey, I was like a year and a half into working at the fertility clinic. I had all the knowledge. I had the doctor at my fingertips, nurses in the office with me, and I still felt so incredibly isolated. I had my husband who was wonderful, but I think it's different. And I experienced this with couples working in the clinic and working outside of the clinic now. It's different as the one who's going through it, taking the shots. It's your body. You're the one having the surgeries. So it, as much as my husband was wonderful, I just felt still so alone. I didn't know any friends who were going through it. And finally, I took a couple month break after the second failed transfer, did a bunch of testing, tested my embryos, did all kinds of things, did endometrial biopsies, took a bunch of heavy duty antibiotics to clear out if there was an infection there, and ultimately finally was successful on our third transfer, who is now my older son, who's 9. And so it was wonderful, but it there's definitely that trauma that forever is there. Thinking about it, it's like you wonder how you survived it. So,
Yeah. And there's so much layered into what you experienced. It's not just, and this is what I believe is just missing when you go back to your medical providers and you're like, okay, tell me what to do now. They don't take into consideration anything that the trauma that your body has experienced emotionally, physically, mentally, what you're going through. And how layered that is because you went through the IUIs, you went through the miscarriage itself, which is for most women a very emotional experience. And it's treated like a medical experience, like a medical event. And it's not like it's a physical, holistic thing that is happening to you. You're going through hormonal shifts right from the start. You're going through postpartum, even though you don't have the baby with you.
yeah.
And then you're going into having multiple surgeries, which is prolonging that for you mentally, emotionally. You can't, you just, it's almost like someone just moving the goalposts and they're like, no, you're not done yet.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
remember thinking that when I found out when they finally confirmed that it was a loss, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna get a DNC. And I remember thinking, I just want to go get it now because it's not a pregnancy. Like, I want to get the DNC. I want to get this over with because that felt like a resolution to what was happening. And then for it to perpetuate then for another 3 months, that it's still not resolved. Like, it was just like this ongoing hit after hit. So, yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's just like kicking you while you're down. Like you're just like, okay, enough is enough. I can't do this. I can't keep going back. I can't keep putting my body through this. And then to understand that they actually, was it, did you say perforated your cervix or
yeah, tore my cervix.
tore your
Even to
cervix?
this Yeah, even to this day, I go into my OB for just general checkups. She's like, your cervix is really funky. I have a totally different OB now. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. But yeah, yeah. And it totally freaked me out. I for sure thought, oh my gosh, you tore my cervix. Like, I'm damaged forever.
Yeah. And why wouldn't you think that way? You're like,
Right.
it wasn't like that before.
Right.
And I was having issues before. So now it is damaged. What
Yeah.
does this mean for me moving forward? Did
Yeah.
they did they explain that to you, or were you left trying to figure that out for yourself if that actually meant
There's,
what that meant?
yeah, no, there's still unresolved like trauma from that cervical tear. I don't think it healed properly. And so all of a sudden, then I believe, and I'm fully believe that is the reason why then every time I would start preparing for a frozen embryo transfer, I would build up this fluid in my lining because my cervix was damaged and there was no way for any of that fluid to like exit appropriately. And so then I'm like, oh my gosh, that fluid's sitting there and now it's like toxic to my uterine lining. And it was, and no one, there's still no one can tell me like if there's a way to fix that.
Just
Yeah, it's still an issue.
yeah, just oh yeah, sorry we did that, and then just send you on your way to just navigate the rest of your life with it,
Yeah.
with no explanation or no support in terms of, okay, yes, it's done, but what do I have to do? Is there precautions that I have to take? Is there a way that I can support myself? Is there something I can do to fix it? And like you said, even just having that thought of an incompetent cervix,
Yeah.
does this mean that I'm never going to hold a pregnancy? Does it mean that I'm going to have to be stitched up every time I do have try to fall pregnant and have to, my body's not going to be able to hold the pregnancy?
Yeah.
I could only imagine. And you're also dealing with the fact that you actually had lost that pregnancy. So you're grieving, you've got all of the emotions, all of the hormones, all of everything. And then on top of that, trying to understand what that all means for you with a torn cervix.
Yeah. And even once I finally did get pregnant, there was that fear, like up until probably even the third trimester when I was like, okay, things are going fine. Like it doesn't appear that I have an incompetent cervix. I think at the 20-week scan, they do like a measurement or something. And so it wasn't until that point. I remember when I was pregnant, I maybe it was like close after the first trimester, and I would have cramping or like twinges. I don't think you have nerve endings that you can really feel in your cervix just naturally. But I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, am I dilating? And every time I would go to my OB, they're like, no, everything's fine. You don't have an incompetent cervix. But I think I couldn't believe that because I was like, who would have thought you would tear my cervix just through a normal DNC? You hear the risks of a DNC and it's like less than 1% chance of tearing your cervix. It's like, of course, that was me. I was also I had, it didn't end up being a molar pregnancy, but it was a triploidy. So there were three sets of chromosomes within the embryo, which means two sperm fertilized one egg. And that is
Wow.
extremely rare. And I was like, I was fit into the rare category there. Why wouldn't I fit into the rare category with this torn cervix and then incompetent? And luckily, it did not turn out that way, but it was definitely a mind game for that entire first pregnancy. And like I said earlier, the ignorance is bliss. And once you've had a miscarriage, like all you're thinking about, even when you get pregnant again, is when is the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
What Something's bound to happen, right? This can't possibly be it now. So everything that you feel and do, you're constantly worried.
Yeah. Yeah. That was something that I went through as well. It was a very traumatic experience for me going through the loss itself. And I wasn't warned against essentially everything that I was going to feel. Everything they said was it was going to be like was not what it was at all, and ended up having to have a DNC myself. But then, like every in the subsequent pregnancies, and this is why I always say to women, I'm like, we have to understand that we need to heal for ourselves first before we go into these subsequent pregnancies, because that fear, the stress, the anxiety, it just can become all consuming if you haven't been able to process the loss before it, because you're still going to get scared. There's still going to be fear and stress and doubt and anxiety and all of it. But if you don't have the tools to help you through it, it's going to be so much more intensified. Because
Absolutely.
I was sitting on the couch at the dental surgery that I was working at, and because I was just putting my feet up for a second, and I got up to get off the couch, and I remember I might have been maybe in my third trimester, and I felt this massive, like, sharp pain. And I was like, oh my God. Like the whole way through my pregnancy, even up until giving birth, I was like, it could happen still. It could still happen. Like it was just shifting the whole way through and feeling those stretching ligament pains and different pains like through the pregnancy. You're like, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? And I was taking myself to the hospital so often. I'm like, what is this that I'm feeling? And I swear that I probably thought I was crazy, but I needed to do it for myself
Absolutely.
to help myself through. But it can be scary. And like you said, ignorance is bliss. If you haven't gone through it before, you cannot understand what it's like to go through a subsequent pregnancy as well after loss.
Yeah.
In even when they tell you, oh, you're having a normal pregnancy. And I'm like, it's far from normal. On paper, it might be normal to you, but this is freaking scary.
Yeah.
And this is where you like that whole, it's just, you feel like when it's written on your paperwork, it should be that this is taken into consideration, that extra layer of care that needs to be expressed in the appointments, in the maybe asking if they want an extra one or two checkups. Because that first stretch in the first trimester, that's the longest time that you can go without knowing what's actually happening. And a lot of the time for yourself, it was at 9 weeks and it was at 7 weeks for me. So that first trimester is a very scary period for a lot of women.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this the other day, actually, and it as we're having this conversation, I'm like, wow, it's interesting how grief lingers even long after the fact, or just the memory and the of what happened. I was reading a statistic the other day with stats on like the percent chance of miscarriage at different stages. So like when you see a yolk sac, when you measure crown rump length, when you see fetal heartbeat. I remember seeing the one it was like fetal heart tones and it was a really small number. It was like less than like I don't want to quote wrong, but I want to say it was like less than 3% chance at that point that you could have a miscarriage. And I was like, that was me. I had a heartbeat. I saw everything looked perfect. All the measurements were great. And being in this field, and at that point I was really early in my career, but even then I had a good sense of a, a what a bad looking pregnancy looked like on an ultrasound. There are certain parameters that you just start to become attuned to when you're looking at ultrasounds every single day. And there were times where I'd be with clients and I would go in the room and I'd walk out and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a really big yolk sac. That's a really high indication that this may not go well. None of that with my pregnancy where I had the loss. Like everything was textbook and I still lost. So even that came up for me the other day looking through this statistic. I was like, wow, yeah, no, that's not a reassuring stat for me, even for people that I work with. And of course, I'm not alluding that to them, but I'm just in my mind, I'm like, oh, but there's still 3% chance that it may not
Mm.
progress.
Yeah. And it was like when I was in the hospital just before the DNC, the gynecologist said to me, it was like 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss. And I was like, again, the statistics, yes, okay, they have their place. They are valid, but also they're not reassuring. And for me in that moment, I was like, why do I feel like 1 in a million? Why do I feel like I'm the only one going through this? And even for you being working in that space, you still felt so alone in that journey. We feel alone for the most part, us as normal people on the outside of the medical system,
Yeah.
but you were inside it, working in it every day, and you still felt that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I still felt, and I saw, and I'm trying to remember back. I know at that point I had seen plenty of loss. I think it's just hard. It's not talked about, right? Yes, we know the statistic 1 in 4, but most women, I think, suffer in silence when they've experienced a loss.
Yeah.
I remember afterwards, I didn't want to tell anyone when I got pregnant again, which is also isolating.
Yeah.
Because you want to be excited and you want to share that joy. But I remember it was like I had the loss, and then I had told all these people because at that point we were like 9 weeks. So all our family knew and a lot of our friends knew. And then it was like I had to tell all of them, which is awful.
Yeah.
And then you're getting there, they're so sorry. And you just want to crawl in a hole and be alone. So I know you're grieving too, but I just need my space.
1 in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a lost mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. That was, I think, one of the hardest things to wrap my head around was that I was telling everyone that I was pregnant and I'd already lost it. And then I can still hear my mum crying when I told her. It's still something that sticks with me even to this day. But I had to lean on her to tell my family because I was like, I can't make those phone calls. I can't tell them, and I don't want them asking me
Yeah.
about the pregnancy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and like you said, it just doesn't leave you. You carry this experience with you, and you just learn to, it's just, you live around it. Like it starts to just become part of you. And this is why, like I always say, that you never forget, like you never move on. It's just that you take now this part of you and you carry it with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
There was just one thing that you mentioned in what you've said here was that empathy and guidance matter just as much as protocols.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's just so profound because I think every lost mum and that has experienced the medical system It's all about protocols. It's all about, okay, what's your next step? But if they could infuse that with empathy, compassion, guidance, like how much different would that experience be?
Yeah, so different. And this is where I could get on a soapbox for all the reasons that I think it's not that way. I think it comes down to the capacity of, and again, in my realm, in the fertility space, there's a high demand for fertility care. There's a lot of patients coming through the system. And so this nursing staff is pulled in all different directions. The doctors are like pushed to capacity. Ultimately, I don't like to think of it this way, but it these clinics are generating revenue, bottom line. And so their goal is to get people through treatment, and hand holding each patient through the experience is not what they're built for. And I think that's the healthcare system in general here in America. It's like it's worked, everything's dictated by the insurance companies on what we can and can't do. And everything is built around like how fast can we get people through fertility treatments. And if one patient leaves, there's another patient that comes in the door to fill that space. And so I just think, unfortunately, they don't have the bandwidth to provide the handheld support that is so desperately needed. I'm sure, I imagine you've heard the statistic, or not statistic, but the saying before that a diagnosis of infertility is equivalent to a diagnosis of cancer. Like the emotions that are experienced are the same. I cannot imagine being a patient with cancer, going through that medical system, having the same kind of care that you get in a fertility clinic. I think I don't work on that side of healthcare, but I just imagine that there's a lot more empathy built into the whole experience and a lot more time and energy spent with those patients than there are in the fertility. And it pains me to say that. I don't like to think that's the way it is, but unfortunately, I think that is the way that it is. Not every doctor and nurse is built the same.
And I think that's, yeah, like you said, it's the capacity and the bandwidth as well, even just your normal GP. Like they're getting people in 15-minute slots. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how can you see someone and understand the depth of what they're going through in 15 minutes? So it is that whole system of get as many people through as possible, but it's not, especially in the fertility, the pregnancy loss space, it needs then, and like you said, and you would totally be right. I would assume there'd be more empathy and care built into a cancer patient's treatment plan than there would be for someone who's navigating fertility. Even just one of my clients that I supported back in my early years of coaching, she was seeing a fertility specialist, and he actually reached out to me at that time and he's, whatever you've done, she's a different person now.
Oh, I love that.
And I was, but to come from a specialist, like, and he was like, I need to know how to do this for my clients. I need to know what you do so I can refer people to you. I think to have, even if they don't particularly have the ability to support people, have someone on hand that can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like you said, it is hard to have maybe have that capacity yourself as the doctor, as the nurse, but maybe it is about, okay, what could we do outside the box? Like, what could we do to support people and be able to have someone to refer to? And I think I've spoken to women in the past who have seen therapists and counselors in the fertility clinics themselves, but it needs to be a holistic approach because these women have said just the talk therapy aspect of those sessions alone aren't sort of providing the support that they actually need to actually navigate the treatments, to navigate everything that sort of comes out of those treatments.
Yeah, definitely. And to that point too, there aren't, I would say So I've worked with patients at clinics across the United States. And in my experience, I would say the majority of fertility clinics don't have a therapist on staff. Some do. I used to work at Northwestern in Chicago, and we had two therapists on staff, but not every patient saw a therapist or even was given that as an option. And I think most clinics don't even have that, and not even necessarily a list of providers that they can refer out to either. And I always say, and I think you are alluding to this, it really needs to be a village of providers and individuals that are working with patients when they're going through this kind of experience in their life, not just the fertility specialist. I think having a therapist involved, I think having someone from a nutritional aspect and a holistic acupuncture or whatever, right? We need to be building villages around these patients. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to revenue for clinics and where they want to invest their money. And again, because there's such a high demand for fertility care, yes, they want their patients to have a good experience, but if a couple patients express unhappy, again, they have more patients who will walk in the door the next week. It's awful. I hate saying it, like it makes me cringe saying that, but I think that's the unfortunate truth.
Yeah, and I guess that not everyone is going, and not every woman is going to experience their fertility treatment as physically traumatic. Not every woman is going to experience loss as such a traumatic experience either. But I think just to have something on hand, and have always said this, and I believe that if the medical system could have something on hand at that point of contact, it would mitigate so much that happens afterwards in terms of the healing that the women have to go through. Because a lot of what happens stems from the treatment that they were offered at the hospital or at the doctor's office or at the fertility clinic, or the lack of support that was provided in those moments. And then the women are walking away feeling, oh, that professional didn't acknowledge what I was going through, so why should it matter to me? But
Mhm.
it's so big to them. And then you're like, if they didn't want to talk about it, if I don't want to address it, who do I speak to? And for you, it was a big experience. For me, it was a big experience. And I know we're not the only ones that are experiencing them as these big traumatic events, that experiences that they actually are. And our body's holding on to that. And we're trying to find the support that we need without really the external world validating that.
Yeah. I, So what this is bringing up for me is I actually was talking with a client that I'm working with yesterday, and she is gone through multiple IVF cycles and has yet to be successful. And she's in the middle of a cycle right now, but the opportunity came about to have a conversation with her doctor. An appointment opened up. So the clinic asked her if she wanted the appointment. And this particular client records her conversations and then sends them to me just so I hear what is being discussed and can provide support or help explain things that maybe she wasn't understanding during the conversation. And the first thing that he says to her and her husband is, guys, this is a really premature conversation. Like, you're in the middle of a cycle, like basically shaming her for wanting to have a conversation about what the next couple of weeks are going to look like in her treatment. And I, on the other end, I'm listening to this and I'm like cringing because I felt shamed, and I'm not even her. And I'm just like, oh, I get it. Like, he's busy. So in his mind, this wasn't an appropriate time for a conversation. But like, patients should be able to ask questions at any point. It shouldn't matter where they're at. They should be able to get those questions answered. And I felt trauma on the other end listening to it.
And that's the thing. It should be not just a one-way street. Like it should be that you're in this feeling like you're in this with the professional, with the provider as well. And I would assume that their job is to not just give you the needles or have the appointments, it's to actually be there for you to answer those questions.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's their job. That's what they should be able to do and create the space for that. regardless, like you said, regardless of where the client is,
Yeah.
they've got questions that are coming up. They should, and she had an appointment, so she should be able to ask those questions, or at least put her at ease, as opposed to making her feel shameful and guilty for
Right.
asking.
Yeah, it was like basically shame on you for scheduling this appointment. This isn't an appropriate time to have this conversation. And in my mind, I was like, the questions, because we had talked the day before on what questions to ask during the appointment. And I was like, even I want some of, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what he's going to recommend. So yeah, it's totally appropriate to have this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you feel afraid to ask questions as you're starting to navigate and progress through because you've had this experience. You feel like you're not going to be met with this, with compassion and understanding the next time you ask a question. So you start to almost shut down, and that doesn't help the process. It doesn't help the woman navigating it. It's only going to cause more stress to her and silence her in the end.
Yeah. And also, I think I witnessed it happen in that moment, but I think this is happening. I know it's happening because I hear it from patients all the time that they feel like a number, they feel alone. So, what do? We grab our phone and we go to Google and we look for the answers, or we go to TikTok and we watch videos of influencers and we get on these online communities, which I think there's definitely power in community support. I think that's very needed. Unfortunately, there can be so much misinformation that then these patients are digesting and internalizing and applying to themselves in their situations, and it may not even be applicable. And now we're causing undue worry and stress that didn't need to be there, all because we don't have access to our providers who are supposed to be the ones with that knowledge to answer it for us. So we're out there and we're going to get our information somewhere. And that's the quickest access for all of us, even outside fertility and anything medical. It's really easy. And now with AI, ChatGPT gives a lot of advice.
Yes, and then that's the thing, like it should not be used for medical advice. And especially ChatGPT wasn't around when I was going through my miscarriage, but we were Googling everything, and it only puts you into more of a spiral because then you still don't have the answers that you need, or you it gives you something totally random that is not even what you're going through. And so then
I
you end up
always,
stressing.
yeah, I have two big things that I always go back to on this topic. One is that we can say fertility, we can say loss. It is not linear. We all have different experiences. In the fertility space, what I tell patients that I'm working with is you can't find your Google twin on the internet. Like that person doesn't exist. Like Jane Smith with PCOS, who's 34 and lives in Massachusetts and is married to whoever and is going to this clinic, and all of these individualized factors play into our journeys. And you can't find, I think the reason that we go and we look for answers on the internet is because we're looking for reassurance. We're looking to find, okay, somebody else who's in a similar situation who's reported success. Oh, if I can find that, okay, she was successful. Whew, okay, okay, good. Then that's my crystal ball is telling me that I'm going to be successful. And it's just not out there. It's just not out there because it is not linear and we all are different. And so we end up going down these rabbit holes, and I don't think I've ever had someone tell me, yeah, I spent 4 hours on Google last night. It feels so much better. I like got all these answers. No one says that. They all feel worse because then it just brings up more questions. And then you're, okay, I didn't even think about that. Now let me go look that up. And it just cascades.
Yeah. And you're just in this perpetual loop of Google and questions and results. And then you're like, oh, now I have some terminal medical diagnosis. It's just
Right.
definitely don't need to go. But that's the thing, like we do, because if we're not getting what we need from our providers or we can't get it in the time that we need it, then unfortunately it is just natural for humans to try and figure it
100%.
out,
Yeah,
to,
absolutely.
to have the answer. We need to just, I'll just figure this little piece of my story out. And then it turns into it's not such a little piece of your story. You end up going down a rabbit hole on Google and go into the Google void.
Yeah. And it consumes your life. My biggest thing that I worry about any patients who are going through fertility treatments, I see so many of them losing their identities, losing the joy in their life because all they're doing is thinking about their fertility journey and what they need to be doing. What do I need to eat perfect? What do I need to, can I do this exercise? Everything becomes all consuming. I've had I've worked with one particular patient for a while now who, when we first started working together, she was like, I'm starting stim. I cannot go out to dinner tonight. And I was like, yes, you can go out to dinner. Like, we do not need to let this consume our entire life. Like, you still need to fill your cup every day. We live in this fast paced society as it is, where we are constantly on the go. Just in normal everyday life, like we are not filling our cups. And then you add in a stressful experience like fertility treatments or pregnancy loss, and just we are depleted and lost. And that's just good, not good for so many, like our psychological, our physical, our mental health. It's not good for any of it.
No, and you do, and the whole situation just becomes so almost like joyless. Like you have, it becomes more clinical. Like even the intimacy becomes more clinical,
Yeah.
and whether it's through fertility treatments or whether it's even after loss, like the healing elements of it, we do need to connect back to what it is that we enjoy for ourselves, what it is
Mhm.
that lights us up, and also connecting back to our partners as well and being able to say, this was my person before this all happened.
Yeah.
And how can we find that again? And
Yeah.
it is so easy to lose yourself in it all, in the sort of the aftermath of what fertility can do and what pregnancy loss can do as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it. I've definitely seen it destroy friendships and relationships. And certainly, I think the intimacy piece of it is huge because it is a job at that point. It's no longer fun. It's okay, like I'm ovulating right now. So, like clockwork, now's the time. Doesn't matter what we're doing. And it takes the joy out of it.
It does. And I think that's where a lot of, like you said, a lot of relationships, it can break down because also there is no joy in it. So then it just becomes this chore that you're doing. Like you said, like on clockwork, like you have to be at a certain time, a certain day, and you're like, if you're ready or not, if you're in the mood or not, it doesn't matter. We've got to go now.
Matter. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I could talk to you forever on this, Laura. There's so many different things that have just popped up, and then we've just gone like in all different little tangents. But I absolutely love how you support women through this space. Do you want to share a little bit more about what you do, how you support
Yeah.
women, and where they can find you?
Yeah, yeah. I'm certified as a fertility doula. I also, my background is in nursing and I have this personal experience. So I combine all of those verticals, and I call myself a fertility support professional where I am supporting individuals and couples through the journey, through education, first and foremost, because I think education, we can stop a lot of the spiraling with education alone, right? If you understand what's happening with your body, if you understand the things that are applicable to you, There's so much that we can avoid, of so many of those rabbit holes that we can avoid going down. And then the emotional support piece is huge, right? I'm not a therapist. And so, going back to a little bit of our conversation earlier, I encourage anyone I'm working with, if you feel that seeing a therapist would be helpful to, please do. That is not my role, but my role is to validate when things are happening and empathize, right? I've been there. I've sat in those shoes, and maybe our journeys most likely are very different, but the underlying pain that is associated with going through fertility treatments, with experiencing a pregnancy loss, are very universal. So just validating and sitting in that with you and being a sounding board for your frustrations and your fears and your those feelings of loneliness. And then I do the medical piece of it is I'm because of my background in this field as a nurse, I do a lot of injection training. So that can be virtually in the States, in the Chicagoland area where I am. I do home injection support as well. But that can be a huge point of contention for a lot of couples. You get this big box in the mail of here's a giant box of syringes. You've never touched one in your life. Congratulations, you're about to go to medical school and mix and inject yourself. So I do that as well. The way that I provide support was virtually through like Zoom and Google Meets bi-weekly with patients, but then also on-demand texting support, which I think is the most powerful piece of what I do. Clinics close at 5 p.m. That is usually when the questions come up, is on the weekends and in those evening hours. And so I make it a point with the individuals that I'm working with to make sure that they have my number. And anytime that something's coming up, I encourage them to text me. I literally tell people you can text me at 2 in the morning. I'm probably not going to answer you at 2 in the morning because I probably am sleeping. But it's important that when something is coming up for you, that you put it out there, because then when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to go, oh my gosh, Jane was up crying at 2 a.m. about something. Like, she clearly something was going on that we need to talk about. I say, I'm your Google. Utilize me as your Google. And if I don't have the answer, we're going to talk about how to advocate for yourself in the clinic, how to get those answers, what you should be looking for at each appointment, or helping you write down and brainstorm questions to ask the next time that you're in for a visit. Again, I'm virtual. I work across the United States mostly. And yeah, it's really utilizing that background that I have from all those verticals to provide that.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And I think that is your point, that the point of difference is that on-demand support, especially in this space. I've always, for myself and for other women, I'm like, you need to be able to have support outside the therapist hours, outside the fertility clinic, outside the doctor's office, because, like you said, they're the times where you're in the shower and something pops into your head and it's 8 o'clock at night and you're like, I can't ask anyone that. So I'm going to have to try and remember. I've got to write that down. And then you forget.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
or you're breaking down in that moment and you need someone in that moment. And like you said, sometimes it's not going to be that instant response because of unfortunately, humans do have to sleep. But if we were robots, that would be different. But also, I think that's really special, is to have a human support that understands where you are, understands how they can tailor that support to you, and having that support outside office hours,
Yeah.
because yeah, not everything is contained to office hours. Like, you don't know when you're going to be triggered. You don't know when all of a sudden you're going to have a thought pop into your head that's going to send you down a spiral.
And I will say, even during office hours, right? As clinics have there's a lot of patients coming in through the door. So you may have a question that comes to you in the morning and you message your clinic or you call and leave a message. It might not be till 3, 4 in the afternoon that you're hearing back with an answer. And here you were supposed to go to work and function like a human, or whatever you're doing. But all day, your mind is like stewing. Okay, did the clinic call me back yet? Checking the portal. Did I get a response? Like, panicking. And a lot of times those are very simple things. I'll just give you a quick example that I always use. But one is that every provider I talk to, they're like, oh yeah, we get this question all day, every day. When you start an IVF cycle, a lot of times you're on birth control for a few weeks leading up to it. And when you stop birth control, you usually stop at about 4 days before you're going to start your injections. When you stop birth control, you get a period. Even if you're not due for a period, you get what's called a withdrawal bleed, which looks like a period. And I all the time get panic texts from patients that are like, oh my God, I am supposed to start my injections tonight. I just started my period. I am freaking out. Is this going to delay everything? Is everything derailed? That is a super simple answer, right? I'm not giving medical advice. I am educating you in that moment. This is normal. This is expected. This is okay. Don't hit the panic button. But maybe if they would have called their clinic, they don't hear for 5 hours. So again, in their mind for 5 hours, this is a big deal. And we can reduce it back to, nope, this is totally normal. No need to worry.
Yeah, and diffuse the situation a lot faster than it being built up in our mind of that it could be something a lot bigger than what it is.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And I love that, like you said, the education piece, a lot of what seems so big when we can educate ourselves on it and the why behind it and the what's going on underneath, like that can take a lot of it takes a lot of guesswork out of it, takes a lot of stressing out of it just to know, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is why. So I love that you're able to educate as well as be the emotional support person because it is that dual role. Yes, people need to be educated, but we're not just leaving them there with all of this information.
Yeah.
We're now having, and there's going to be those moments where you need to catch them in those emotional spirals, in those breakdowns, and have that support for them in those moments as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you want to share where people can find you?
Yes, yeah. So I am on Instagram. My handle is just Navigating Fertility with Laura, same as my business name, Navigating Fertility with Laura. I am also can be reached by email, Laura at navigatingyourfertility.com. Navigatingyourfertility.com is my website as well. You can book a free discovery call with me there. It's really just a no pressure time. My goal in those calls is let's assess if working together feels right, but I am a no pressure type of person. If you get on a call with me and at least you take away one piece of information from that call that has helped you on your journey, then my job is good. Like that makes me very happy. Yeah, Instagram, email, website, all the places.
Yes. And you're going to be starting up your own podcast too soon.
Yeah. No, thank you for reminding me. Yes, launching on March 3rd, on a fellow coworker and I, or a colleague, we're going to be starting our own podcast, Fertility Nurses Unfiltered. So we're on Instagram, Fertility Nurses Unfiltered, and we're going to be having real conversations from, we say we're two nurses, one mic, no bullshit. Like we are here to talk about all the stuff that maybe you don't normally talk about on the clinic. To my knowledge, there's nothing else out there like it. I see a lot of podcasters out there doing stuff in the fertility space, nothing from the two dual nurse perspective who have actually worked in the clinic. So we're really excited for that to launch.
Yeah, it sounds amazing and an incredible resource. Obviously, if people are going to want to listen in, want to listen to what you have to say. And I think it would be a great addition to the podcast world, especially when we can bring these conversations that are missing that currently aren't being had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you felt like we haven't covered that you wanted to share?
No, I would just say I think we've touched on this point a bit during our conversation, but to me, the biggest takeaway from any of this, when you're on whatever journey it is for you, fertility, loss, postpartum, any of those, build a village around you. You are not meant to do this alone. That can be family, that can be friends, but there are a lot of people out there working in these spaces who can provide professional support. And don't be afraid to ask for that support. Like, we are human beings, like, we can only hold ourselves together so much. And especially if you have little ones at home too, and you're also navigating these things, like, I think as women, we take on a lot and we think we're superheroes and we can do all these things, but it is okay to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, build a village. The intention of everything that I do, I bring people into spaces so that others can see what support is available to them. there is support, so much support for you if you want it. And it doesn't have to just be one professional. It can be multiple different professionals in different healing spaces. And like you said, it can just be sometimes a support group or a family member or a friend, but choose those people wisely. Be very intentional with the people that you have helping you. And if something's not working for you, find the thing that does. It's very important to find what works.
Yeah. Fill your cup every day. Find one thing each day to fill your cup. That's been my motto in 2026. One thing each day, whether you're going through any of this or not, one thing each day. We all need to keep our cups filled.
Yes, absolutely. We can't help anyone when we're running on empty and depleted, let alone
Yep.
ourselves. We can't
Yep.
show up for anyone else at that point.
Yep.
So no, a great reminder even for myself. So thank you.
Of course.
I just want to thank you again, Laura, for being a part
Yeah.
of the podcast today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're so welcome. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcast, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.